All right. Hey, I'm Marc Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. It's Thursday, June 25 in the year 2020. I want to thank each and every one of you, all of my Urban League friends and family, all of the supporters of civil rights, social justice, and economic opportunity, wherever you are, anywhere in the United States. Thank you for joining us. And if you're abroad, overseas, and the continents of Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, or Latin America, the Caribbean, we appreciate your participation, your presence this morning. So thank you so much for joining us. We have a special edition of Facebook Live this morning, and I'm very, very proud to be joined by Micheal Cristal, who is the president of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Phi Beta Sigma fraternity is one of the Divine Nine, the historic African-American Greek letter organizations. If you are a member of an African-American or Black Greek letter organization, you know how powerful that bond is. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, actually a third generation member. But in the Greek family, we are all family in the Black Greek letter family, which are really civic associations, which really began as student unions on college campuses, on majority campuses, and on historically Black college campuses over 100 years ago. So President Cristal, I am so proud to be with you today. I want to thank you for all of your leadership and for the commitment of Phi Beta Sigma.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mark, and certainly good morning to your audience. Super excited to be here with you with so many social issues happening within our community this morning. And you think about the context of African-American Greek letter organizations, and specifically Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. When you think about our motto, culture for service and service for humanity, and our vision of a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our communities, I couldn't think of a better place I'd like to be this morning than really talking with you about how your organization, but more importantly, how we collectively can address some of the issues and make some long-term and sustainable improvement.
Well, hey, it's great to be with you. And I know Phi Beta Sigma has been working on COVID, working on voter engagement, working on social justice issues. Why don't you share with our Facebook Live audience a little bit, and maybe we ought to begin because you've got a special history of engagement with the Urban League movement. You're what we call a quarter century club member, having been involved with the Urban League movement for many, many years. So why don't you start with that and then tell us a little bit about the work of Phi Beta Sigma on COVID, social justice, and criminal justice, and the other issues we face today.
Absolutely. Mark, my connection with the Urban League started, I was a young store manager for Kroger. Your office in Memphis was right above our parking lot. And I'm sure you probably know the name Herman Ewing.
Oh yeah, a legend.
Yeah.
Herman Ewing. Herman Ewing was there, met him right before he passed in my early days as president.
Yeah. So Herman was president. He came down and wanted to help facilitate an opportunity with Kroger and the Urban League. And he asked me to kind of get engaged a little bit, and I did, established a working relationship with him. He ultimately invited me to join the board. I served on the board in Memphis, probably about maybe 10 years, maybe a little less. Ultimately had an opportunity to serve as board chair. Probably one of the proudest moments I had as board chair. We actually appointed Tamika Hart as our first female president and CEO in the history of the which Tamika went on to do some really good things with the affiliate. I had a chance to serve on the board in Seattle. I had an opportunity to start an opportunity to serve on the board in Atlanta. I got promoted to Seattle, went down and met the president, never got on the board. And currently I serve on the board of directors here in Phoenix with George Dean. Very passionate about the work that you've done. When I became elected president of the fraternity, we signed an MOU with the league back in 2018. We've done some really good work in that regard. So know the organization very well, very passionate about the leadership that you're certainly providing, and really committed to the work that we're doing collectively. But when you think about some of the real issues that are facing our community, you really think about COVID-19. When that hit back in March, Mark, we did a whole lot of things. The biggest thing is when you think about that issue, when it first rolled out, there was just a tremendous amount of lack of knowledge.
Mhm.
Because there was an opportunity for engagement and understanding. And you know, like most, we kind of started internally first to make sure our members were very well equipped and very knowledgeable. And so we had a lot of calls around engagement, brought in a lot of our members who had professional knowledge from the health perspective, behavioral health, to give insight and understanding, because not only was it a health issue, it was a mental issue as well. Anguish that came over people, economic disparities was given visibility. And so we made wholehearted efforts to connect with our members on understanding. Once we got past that, we certainly started looking at, now how can we provide our members good knowledge so that we can understand how can we connect with communities better? In many cases within our community, we know that employees who are either on the front line or heavily involved in customer service, who are connected, that's where the exposure has been the greatest. And so how do we really provide some guidance around that so that people could understand that better? When you think about voter engagement and all the social unrest that has occurred, you know, when George Floyd, I've always believed that was the tipping point. When George Floyd murder, and I think that's what it was, happened, I think the greatest impact of that experience is that we witnessed, for those 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we witnessed life being taken for George. And I think as a result of us witnessing it, it wasn't like we hadn't seen that before, Mark, because we had. We saw it when back in the 60s with Emmett Till. If you fast forward through the 90s, we saw it with Rodney King. If you fast forward even closer, we saw it with Mr. Arbery. We saw it with Breonna Taylor, but it was something a little bit different with George or Mr. Floyd, because we witnessed death coming away. And as we witnessed that, we knew that the results was, how could we really watch the whole nation, the whole world, I call it Americana, kind of stepped up. In the past, when we witnessed something like that with Mr. Garner in New York, it was basically us out there protesting.
Right.
But with Mr. Floyd, the whole country was protesting. It was reflective of society. And I think to a large degree, it was because we witnessed that murder. And so it was now time for us to move from protesting, which you have to celebrate the community. By and large, it was very civil. There was outliers, but by and large, very civil. And so you had to really celebrate the protests. And then we moved towards policy decision-making. You think about what Keith Ellison was able to do when he became the prosecutor in Minnesota. He was able to step in and move from a third-degree murder charge to a second degree. He gave great clarity around that. And then when you think about today, the House is actually ready to vote on police reform legislation. Last week, the Senate Republican introduced a bill. On the surface, you got to be excited that at least we're having some formal conversation within the halls of Congress. But then when you start dissecting the bills, you got to say, wow, you look at that Republican bill, I'm not going to say it's an empty suit, but it appears to be a pretty empty suit. There's a lot of conversation around data. It's a lot of conversation around commissions. It's a lot of conversation around appointing a commission to understand the issues with Black men and boys, which, you know, I think that's a good conversation. But Mark, I think they can probably call me or you, and we could give them some good insight. On what's going on.
No, I think the bill, I think you called it. It's an empty suit. I call it a toothless tiger. And it's a bill. But, you know, the good news about the bill, or the positive news, is that those members embraced the recommendations of the National Urban League and other civil rights organizations, the Legal Defense Fund and the Lawyers Committee and the Leadership Conference and the NAACP and NAN and others, the recommendations we offered, and also the encouragement and demand we offered that we need a bill and we need it now. And I think that as the House passes this bill, all spotlight should be on the Senate. And I want to remind all of our Facebook followers and all of you who are listening today to call the United States Senate at 202-224-3121. You can also go to our phone to action at our website or on social media and send a message to your member of the United States Senate. Say you want the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. You want the real bill. You want the real deal, not the Memorex deal. You want the real bill, not the fake bill. And you're right, the fact that there's a discussion on both sides represents a step, but this is not a moment for symbolic victory. It's not a moment for hollow gestures. This is not a Washington moment.
Right.
This is a people's moment where people are demanding accountability. I'm so proud to see under your leadership, Phi Beta Sigma step up and really, really play a role on these deep policy issues, because, you know, Black Greek letter organizations are called Greek letter organizations, but don't function like mainstream Greek letter organizations.
Right.
Black Greek letter organizations from their very founding were about purpose and service, about lifting up our people, about celebrating our successes. And we have to continue to make that point that Black Greek letter organizations don't exist for the party,
Right.
even if we sometimes like to party.
Absolutely.
We exist for the purpose.
Right.
And I think under your leadership, that's exactly what Phi Beta Sigma is doing. And how are your members thinking about voting this fall? What kind of feedback? And I'm sure they're energized and ready to turn out the vote, educate voters, and fight voter suppression. What kind of feedback are you getting from them across the nation?
Absolutely. You know, first, Mark, I want to really thank you and acknowledge the huge compliment you give when you talk about the relevancy of our D9 community. And I'm being very inclusive now, because when you think about the founding of our history, in many cases, we were founded on HBCU campuses. We were founded during the time frame that so many of the civil rights liberties that we embrace and acknowledge today,
taken away.
They were so absent during the time that we were founded. And so when you think about our fraternities and our sororities, you know, I call it the ultimate trifecta. And that is, we were birthed with a civic mind. We were extremely culturally aware. And then to, you know, kind of complete that, we're intellectually strong. So when you bring those three together, you have, like, I would like to call the ultimate trifecta, and which means that by and large, we're very well prepared. Now, to your point, and I think Tom Joyner said it best, when you think about fraternities and sororities on the college campus, you know, the instant thought is, you're going to have probably a good party. That's just the truth.
And a step show.
It's going to be a good Greek show, and the Sigmas are going to always win it. We always but you know, that's what the reputation is. But one of the things that we have been working extremely hard on is how do we elevate our voice on the relevant issues of the day? And how do we carve out our space to make sure that our presence is being felt? And so when you think about your subject, centered around what level of engagement of our members around voter registration and voter engagement. You know, one thing I was most proud of, Mark, and I apologize, I got a prop, but I knew we would probably talk about this. You know, our fraternal organ, the Crescent magazine, it was in the winter of 2019, we published A Battle for America, our comprehensive focus on Phi Beta Sigma's mobilization around voting, almost a year in advance. And so we knew that the 2020 election forthcoming was critical, but we also knew that it was more than just voter registration. I call that the gateway to the policy decision-making, but I also knew that that was a huge opportunity for voter education, because not only do we need to register to vote, we need to understand what the issues are. We need to be an informed voter, but it didn't need to stop there. We also need to know that at the time of the election, voter mobilization was most important. When you go back to 2016, one of the criticisms that we got, well, we were not that engaged. And so how do we become more active? And I'm talking about the collective unit again now.
Yeah, right.
2 million members, how do we become more active? And so we've been working collaborative with your organization. We've been working collaborative with your sister organization, the NAACP. We know you have the profound and defined resources that support it. And so not only the federal election, but we're also having great conversation around city elections, state elections. Again, we talked about Keith Ellison earlier. It was the election in 2018 of Keith Ellison becoming the Attorney General for Minnesota that allowed the Democratic governor of Minnesota to appoint Keith to oversee that case. Protest, relevant. Advocacy, relevant. But going to the voter box was most relevant. And now we have Keith Ellison leading that charge. The same, I believe, has got to be true for this upcoming election. And so when we think about voter education, we think about the right to vote, we think that is most important. Protest, advocacy, but we got to get to the ballot box.
We have to get to the ballot box. And, you know, this year, we face the challenge of COVID. We face this active effort that is being enabled at the highest levels in the Oval Office to suppress the vote, to somehow create the big lie about mail-in voting. We need mail-in voting everywhere. We need early voting everywhere. We need to end the voter purges that we saw took place in places like Florida and Georgia. There is an active effort. It's nasty, it's pernicious, it's diabolical, it's anti-American to suppress the vote and shrink the electorate, because the forces that want to turn the clock back or hold America in some distant past are desperate. And it appears as though they'll use any method or means, however unfair, however lacking in constitutional merit. And so we have to fight, and we have to remind people that this voter suppression also will include a propaganda campaign online that will, as in 2016, say to us, particularly targeted at young Black voters, don't vote, it's a waste of time. There'll be false information like 2016 telling people they can vote by text or vote by email. There'll be targeted propaganda giving people the wrong polling place, the wrong date of the election. So we're going to have to be strong and resolute as a community. Never in modern times, in modern times being since the passage of the Voting Rights Act, have we seen such a just pernicious, naked effort to suppress the vote. And this must be fought and resisted with every fiber that we have. We have to protect the franchise. And I will look forward to continuing to work with you and your chapters across the nation. We've all got to be aligned to encourage people to, number one, be registered, number two, be educated, and number three, vote. And educating means it's the presidency, but it's the Senate, and it's those state house seats, and those state legislative seats, and that mayor, and that city council, and in places, 40 states elect judges. It's judicial position. So when you get in the voting, and that ballot is long, we have to educate people to go in prepared, bring a list, bring a sample ballot with you to help you navigate. And this is one of the reasons why voting by mail is sometimes better, because people don't have the pressure of time. They can sit at their kitchen table. They can sit at a desk in their house. They can sit wherever and fill out the ballot quietly, carefully, and then pick up the phone and consult. I see a race, I'm not sure. You know, what am I going to do on this race? I mean, that's why I think voting, we have to educate people about voting by mail, but preserve the right for people like, my mother's this way. She wants to go vote in person. She wants to go in the early voting period and vote in person. We ought to provide options, choices for people to be able to vote. Ultimately, we will have a system of same-day registration. Ultimately, we'll have a system that allows people to vote safely by internet, perhaps, and vote in person if you choose. We've got to make this franchise widely available and not treat it like it's a privilege.
Absolutely.
Never use privilege when it comes to voting. It is a right.
That's right.
A right that we have as citizens of the United States. So I just, as we close, I wanted you to talk about the young brothers of Phi Beta Sigma, because we all, the beauty for so many of us, right? And you pledged in college, and I pledged in college. That experience is burned into my experience and memory. And those I was in the pledge process with and online, my line brothers, as we call them, remain my closest, deepest friends today. What's your hope for the next generation of people rising and coming up? What do you see? What do you sense?
You know, number one, I think the promise is extremely good. I love the energy. You know, when you think about the social unrest that we were just talking about earlier, it is our collegians who are the most inspired. It's our collegians and our young alumni who are most involved. They're the ones who are challenging the organization. What are we doing? And so with that level of energy and excitement, I'm inspired. Probably, Mari, one of my proudest moments when I was blessed to travel around the country pre-COVID, I always enjoyed the conversation I'm having with our collegians, because the intellect is strong, the promise of tomorrow is huge, the dreams are large, knowing where they want to go is profound, and they're so prepared. Look at the opportunities, and they're reaching for it. The energy around leadership inside the fraternity, excited, but energy around leadership outside. We got many of our members, just like you do, young members who are running for local offices, state offices. And so they want to be involved. And I'm very proud of what our fraternity is doing in providing that level of leadership and support. One of the last thing I want to connect with you on, Mark, as we prepare for the close is, when we came in office, the centerpiece of our programmatic focus area was our Sigma Beta Club, which is our youth group. We're now mentoring over 4,000 boys and young men of color all across this country. And what I call it is the trilogy of change, Mark. We start with those young men, 12, 13 years old. We inspire them to not just go to high school, but to graduate with great honors. And then our encouragement is for them to also go off to college. And with the intent of hopefully pledging Phi Beta Sigma, but pledge what you want. Because our whole goal is, let's graduate, let's be prepared, let's allow men who look like them to serve as role models, not taking anything away from celebrities, not taking anything away from athletes, but Micheal, Cristal are going to be with you on Saturday morning all the time, all across this country. And so you're going to see my presence, you're going to know my profession, you're going to hear my voice, and my hope is I'm going to give you inspiration for whatever dream that you might have. And so you graduate from college, we're going to help you find employment through our Sigma Executive Leadership Council, which is representative of professional brothers who are executives in Fortune 500 companies. And then you're going to join an alumni chapter, and we're going to help you get life started. And so when you think about that, we call that the trilogy of change. We started with you were very young. We stayed with you all the way through high school. We stayed with you in college, and then we ultimately stayed with you when you became an alumnus after college. And so as we think about that, and we think about, wow, Micheal, what's your thoughts about the collegians' fourth cohort coming forward? We believe they're very strong. We believe they're very passionate. And Mark, even in that same vein, I'm extremely excited this morning to share with you, because of the excellent work that you're doing, because of the work you're specifically doing within youth development, and you just heard the passion that Phi Beta Sigma has on youth development. I'm extremely proud to present to you this morning, on behalf of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, a check in the amount of $50,000 to support you in your efforts, because as you heard me say, I'm a strong believer in what the Urban League is doing. I know what the Urban League is doing. And on behalf of the General Board of Phi Beta Sigma, on behalf of over 250,000 brothers all across this country, we want to say to you that we don't just believe in what you're doing, we want to plant a seed of growth in what you're doing so that the work can continue to manifest across this country. So a huge congratulations on what you're doing and very proud of it.
Hey, let me just thank you. What a great surprise, and what a powerful gesture to assist us in doing our continuing work. Thank you so much. Please thank the General Board. Please thank the Brotherhood for the gesture of support, and continue to do your work. And thanks for your leadership, and give George my best. George is one of my favorite Urban League leaders. Every conversation I have with him, it's nuggets of wisdom, it's pearls of history. So please give him my best. Hey, thanks for being with us today. Really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, Micheal Cristal, President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, with me today on this special edition of Facebook Live. As always, follow us on Twitter at @NatUrbanLeague. Go to our website at nul.org. We'll be back on Facebook Live on Tuesday. Today, the House of Representatives will vote on the Justice in Policing Act. I'm pretty sure they have the votes, but that's just the first step on a journey to make that law. We've got to respect George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, and all of those who lost their lives due to police violence by passing the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. So once again, let's be strong, resolute advocates for those strong policy measures. Protests must lead to policy. Protest includes voting. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for being with us. Once again, Marc Morial, President of the National Urban League. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep the faith.